Hi guys, my name is Paul. I'm a woodworker. I've been a woodworker for about 35 years. I'm doing some floors. I'm redoing my stairs. The stairs in my house were carpeted, and they're carpeted over pine, and never quite made it for me. So after 20 some years, I'm thinking it's time. So I'm going to put in white risers, made of pine, and then I'm going to put it in oak treads. And so the finish for this type of product is typically polyurethane. Polyurethane holds up, it's durable. It's actually a plastic coating. So I've worked with polyurethane. I've worked with a lot of products. I've worked with tung oil. I've sprayed lacquers. I've done a whole bunch of different things. But I've never done floor polyurethane. I didn't know if there was a difference. So I started Googling it for information. I love Google. Google, has saved me from a lot of things. I've changed the brakes on my cars. I'm not a mechanic. I'm a wood guy. But when it comes time to change the brakes on my car, I go to YouTube and the information's there, and making the model, and it's absolutely perfect. But today I want to show you how to apply urethane properly. One of the things that I found is when I Googled urethane for floors, I found that a lot of people complained about bubbling. Now, one of the things I do when I review any product is I look at the negatives, because I think I learn more from the negative comments than I do from the positive comments. So I want to see what kind of problems the product is having, etc. And it seemed consistently, it didn't matter the product, it didn't matter the name of the product, but consistently users of polyurethane complained about bubbles. And I know it's a common problem, but and a lot of people trash the products that they use. Trust me, it's not the product. It's one of two things. It's the applicator themselves, the person who puts it down, or it's the applicator tool that they use, the brush or the sponge or the lamb's wool or whatever it is they use to put the product down. So it's an error on the part of the user. It's not an error on the part of the manufacturer. So what I want to show you is how to do it properly, because there should be no bubbles in urethane. And so this video is a little bit about how to get that perfect finish with urethane. So I hope you enjoy. I hope you learn something. The one thing about putting down urethane, especially on a heavy traffic area like steps, is you have to do it in multiple coats. So the first coat, the second coat, the third coat, the fourth coat, how many ever coats you want to put down, it's all the same process. So basically, once you put down the first coat, little light sanding, and then go for the second coat, and you use the same procedure until you get to the graded finish that you want. So hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learn a lot, and let me know your feedback when you're done. Thanks. I'm going to go through the steps now. Okay, a little bit more about my project. I am using Minwax polyurethane floor. I chose to go with oil rather than water. You know what? I'm not going to debate it. There's all kinds of debates. You can go to all kinds of blogs. You can do whatever you think is best. Personally, I prefer oil. I think it stands up a little better. I like the way it lays on a little better. Cleanup's a little more difficult, but I think all in all, I just prefer. I've always used oil. I'm an old school guy, and I prefer to stay with oil. The other thing I want to talk to you about is the brushes. It's kind of important to choose the right brush. This is the cheapo brush that you can buy for 25 cents a piece or whatever. If you look at the bristles on it, I'm trying to do this right here. If you look at the bristles on it, they're pretty thin. I mean, air gets inside, and that's where it causes bubbles. So the thinner the bristles, the cheaper the brush, the more air you're going to get. This is 100% China hair bristle brush. It's okay. But it's still pretty thin, so there's a lot of opportunity for air to get in there. This is an ox hair brush. This is a pretty expensive brush, but I don't know if you can tell or not, but the density on this brush is like 100 times different than the other two brushes that I just showed you. So there's less air gonna get in here. It's just the fact that I'm rubbing it like this. I'm putting air in there. There's air in any space that isn't occupied by some kind of fluid or solid is going to have air in it. So that's where our potential problem comes in. And I'll show you a trick that I just learned that I think is pretty cool. Stay with me and I'll be right back. Okay, so polyurethane comes out pretty thick. It's basically a plastic coating. part of the problem is the thicker the substrate, the more chance there is for trapping air. So the thinner, the less chance that that bubble is going to pop, or the more chance that the bubble is going to pop. So I recommend that you do kind of a ratio of, let's see if I can do this, 3 to 1. 3 parts urethane to 1 part mineral spirits. That'll thin out your product enough to do 2 things. It'll decrease drying time and it'll trap less air. Now, the reason the manufacturer doesn't thin it this thin is because then it requires an extra coat, because you're cutting it down to 1. So instead of 3 coats, you might have to give it 4 coats, or 1 coat you might have to give it 2 coats. The final coat can be a full thick coat, but again, 3 to 1 is the general ratio. And make sure that you don't shake the product, because again, you're introducing air into it. What you want to do is gently, very gently, with a wooden paint mixer stick, stir it very, very gently. Same thing when you add the mineral spirits to dilute it, very, very gently stir it. I always pour it into a different container, and I'll show you the container in just a few seconds. But again, the pouring has to be very, very gently, because again, we don't want small air bubbles in the product that'll turn up on our surface. Okay. This is kind of a cool trick that I saw online, and I really like it. I've never used it before, but all I'm doing is I'm taking mineral spirits and pouring it into a bucket, and the author of the blog talked about air getting between the bristles, and he suggested that again, this is for oil base, but if you're before you start your project, take your brush. I don't know if this is going to come out or not. I'm going to try it, but take your brush and stick it in the mineral spirits. I don't know if you can see it bubbling or not, but all those bubbles that are coming out of there are air bubbles that are trapped inside and in between the bristles, and that soaking them in mineral spirits releases that. Now, the trick is you have to get it below the metal of the brush retainer, so there has to be enough mineral spirits in there. But see, it's still coming out. I don't know if you can see that on video or not. I hope you can. But it's kind of a cool trick. The other thing that he said, and I after the first coat I agree with this, is it makes cleanup of your brushes. I mean, a boar's hair brush or an ox hair brush is an expensive brush, so you obviously want to use it more than once. So it makes the cleanup a lot easier. Yeah, I think most of the air is out of there now. I'm going to let that soak for about 10 minutes. It'll give the dust a chance to settle in my shop, and I can get other things set up in the meantime. But good little trick, neat little trick. I strongly suggest using it, because it does get some of the air brushes out of the applicator. Now, here's an important step. I'm going to take the brush out of the container of mineral spirits. It's soaked for about 10 minutes. I'm going to let it drip out, drip out, and drip out as much as I can. I'm not shaking it, I'm not spinning it, I'm not brushing it up against the side, because again, that kind of defeats the purpose, because we're introducing air into the product, or into the applicator. So again, maybe just get as much of the fluid to drip out, most of the mineral spirits, and then I'm just going to take an old piece of old newspaper, and I'm going to just gently touch it to it, and I don't know if you can see this or not, but it's pouring out. Obviously, you can't dip this right in the polyurethane, because the brush is loaded with mineral spirits. So there'd be no resins in there. It would be all mineral spirits that you're applying. So this process takes a few minutes, and again, notice I'm doing very slowly, very gently, not rushing it. I'm not putting any pressure down. I'm not forcing the brush down to try to squeeze it out, because again, if you squeeze the moisture out, you're just going to be adding air in between the spaces. So I'm just gently just letting the weight of the brush, and I'm dragging it across the paper, and it's bleeding out pretty rapidly now. So this process could take me another 4 or 5 minutes, so I'm not going to bore you with it. So I'm going to shut the camera off, and I'm going to keep doing it until I get it down to a reasonably dry state. So we're getting down. You know, as I start to drag the brush across, I can see dry lines in between. So that tells me most of the mineral spirits is out of the brush. But I'm going to give it a few more strokes here, and you know, I just want to talk to you a little bit about finishing your project. You know, when you think about what makes a project a good project or a bad project, I mean, there's a lot of components to it, but I think most woodworkers, while we appreciate the fit of the dovetails and the corner and miters and all that other good stuff, I think the average consumer, the average person out there who's going to look at your project, unless he's a woodworker, doesn't give a rat's ass about that. What he's going to kind of think about is the way it's finished and the way it looks on the surface. So my suggestion is take your time. You know, do a good job on the structure of the project, but take your time on the finish, because that's really where it all is. I know none of us like sanding, and none of us like sitting here and doing all this, but again, it's what makes or breaks a project. So I'm going to shut down now, and we'll get ready for the next step, and I can show you that. Okay, so if you remember our last step in wood preparation, we did the light sanding. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a paper towel, just dabbed it in mineral spirits, and I'm going to wipe it down real quick. And you can see kind of there's a dust haze over it, and it kind of dulled your surface, and you kind of probably wondered what the heck did I just do to it by sanding in between coats. But this will all come off. There's just a lot of dust and some. So I don't know if you can see that or not, but that's the dust residual that was there. So I'm going to just wipe it down reasonably well. Again, I'm not going to overdo it. You don't have to. I'm going to dry it off real quick here. That's good. And then out of my old cautiousness, I take one extra step. I just take a piece of tack cloth real quick and wipe it down. Okay. So that's getting the wood ready to lay down your first coat. Now, again, the whole trick is not to introduce air into the brush. So I'm just going to dip it, maybe 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch, just to make sure that all the bottom bristles are done. Let it drip off. I'm going to start in the middle of the wood project. I don't know if you can see, but there's little bubbles right at the end there. Those will break off. I'm not going to worry too much about those. I'm not putting any pressure on this brush. I'm just really dragging it across, because if you push it down, you're going to do it. Now, here's the trick. If you start it all the way at the beginning end, you're going to have a big glob laying there. I start midway. This is thinner down here and a little heavier down here, so I'm going to come midway, and I'm going to drag the thick part over the other half. And then I'll feather it out later. But again, I don't want to. And then I'm going to come back and dip in the same procedure. Now watch the speed that I'm working at. The faster you go and back and forth brush strokes, put air into the project. We don't want to put air into it. We don't want those little bubbles. And we're going to come back and take that glob, and we're going to spread it over the other half. Okay? You don't want to overwork it. You know, when you paint, you go back and forth rapid brush strokes, and that's fine. There's the bubbles all over there at the end. Not a big deal. I'm not going to worry about those yet, because they're going to come out, most of them. Okay. Come back. Then I'll heavier portion that was laying there. Repeat. You kind of get the idea, right? Slow and gentle. The slower you go, the better. You're laying down the product. You're not painting on the product. Alright, the edge. And then the bottom. Now I do have some bubbles in there. Okay? What I'm going to do, and this is called feathering, and feathering means, when you think about feather, light as a feather. So I'm just going to lay the brush on, and I'm going to drag it one direction across, and I'm going to go slow. Come all the way to the end. And now all the bubbles are gone. There's a few little ones in there. I'll get that out either with steel wool or sanding the next coat. I'm going to overlap just a little bit. Follow the same procedure. You don't want a real thick coat. You're better off putting it down in multiple layers than you are all at once, real thick. Again. I'm going to go all the way through this step. Finish this tread off, and then start on the next one. I've got 12 steps to do, so. And then just a little bit at the bottom of the nose. And that's it. That's it. A few little bubbles. Leave them. Most of those will pop. Your coating has been thinned to a good enough point. You've applied it properly. Just leave it alone. Don't overwork it. The biggest mistake people have with finishing, they want to overwork it. They sit there and they analyze it and they overdo it. So we're just going to leave this now, and I'll show it to you when it dries. Okay, I just want to give you a quick idea of how much sanding you have to do in between coats. I've already put down one coat of the polyurethane finish. There are very, very tiny bubbles out of there, and that'll come out with the sanding. So, but just to give you an idea of how simple the sanding is, I'm using a Porter Cable orbital sander with a 220 grit sandpaper on it. So watch how long this takes. This is a 4-foot board. It's 12 inch. It's a 12-inch step. Okay, that's the palm sander, random orbital sander. I'm just going to do the nose of the tread. That's pretty much it. I'm gonna dust it off. I'll actually use my my air compressor. But before I put the next coat of finish on, I'll use either a tack cloth or a little mineral spirits to get the rest of the dust off. But that's all there is to sanding. Not a big deal. Don't spend a lot of time on it. It'll look like you ruined the work, all the work that you just did, but it'll come back. Trust me. Okay, this is the final step in my 12 treads that I had to do. You saw me light sand it. You saw me hopefully wipe it down with mineral spirits. All those were very quick procedures. I just brought the board over to my application station and just using a piece of tack cloth to take the final off. But I just want to repeat the process. We're going to gradually dip, no tapping, no introducing of air. Lay the brush down gently. The brush is to lay down the material. So it's not to work it into the wood, it's not to, it just lays it right on the surface. And I start in the middle of the project with a full brush, because what's going to happen is wherever I start, it'll end up being a little heavier. And so I'm just going to spread approximately half of it across, and then I'm going to come back into the thick part of it and spread it in the other direction. And again, slow strokes, no pressure, a little bit of bubble there, just feather it out. You don't want to overwork the material. Again, I can't be too cautious about that. Or the more you fool with it as it starts to dry up, any bubbles that you put in a drier material are going to last. If they're in a thin, wet material, chances are they may pop for themselves. But we're not going to take a chance on that. What we're going to do is we're going to feather it out in the final one. So we got my nose here. Make sure I got the end. I'm going to get the bottom of the nose because it's going to be a 1-inch overhang. And then my final stroke, I see a hair here. Get that off of there. My final stroke here is I'm just going to lay the brush on the end. and I'm going to drag it in one direction only, not back and forth, not right to left, not across, one direction only. I'm going to come all the way down and across the wood, following the grain. Following the grain, one direction only. I overlap just a little bit over the first brush stroke, overlap again over the second brush stroke, and again, just relatively little pressure here. The process is called feathering, and feathering means light as. Just dragging it out, and this tends to get rid of any little bubbles that may have formed. So there you have it. We're going to let that dry. That's the second coat, and then we'll come back and repeat the process. Okay, so this was my final coat. This is the finished product, and I don't know if this is going to turn out, but we'll try it. And I think it's okay. But you see no bubbles on the surface. So the project was a success. Few simple steps to follow, and you too can have a nice looking woodworking project covered with polyurethane. Again, take your time, work slow. The final coat, by the way, was put on at full strength. I didn't dilute it, I didn't cut it at all, so that's how to do it. Good luck. Let me know. Give me some feedback. Let me know what you think. Okay, bye.